package at that time.
I'm sorry, so you think that somehow somebody promised that he would get this 2,000, and just for people who might be just tuning in, just a little background. What is in this bill is a $600 check for individuals. And what the president said after he already got the bill is that it should be $2,000 per individual. Are you telling me that he got assurance maybe from leadership in the Republican House or the Senate?
Dana, I don't know that for sure. I can just tell you the president is very clear that that's what he's wanted. And as you know, and as I know, the president doesn't back down or back away from his words. And so if that's what he said he wanted in it, and he's got good news, I would make the assumption that that's what he's received, that he's been told that the Senate will allow that to go through. The House will be able to pass it. The Senate, there's been questions if they would be able to pass that or not. And the question still comes down to, I believe, possibly of how it's going to be funded or paid for, or which area it was going to be taken from. So I think that's probably what it is. But Dana, I was making phone calls. We came out trying to figure out what it was. And so far, I haven't been able to get hold of anybody.
Well, thank you for trying to do that. You mentioned the fact that it was the Senate, and still, apparently, as far as we know, still is the Senate. It's not just the Senate. I mean, Democrats in the Senate, for the most part, are okay with the $2,000 check that the president is now calling for. It was the president's fellow Republicans for months who were pushing back on this, your colleagues in the United States Senate, mostly, some in the House too, but particularly in the Senate. What makes you, well, let me just ask you this. You personally, you are a Republican lawmaker. Are you okay with what the president is now asking for?
Well, as I said before, Dana, it wasn't the first time the president said he wanted to spend more money. If we're going to fund all these foreign governments, he made it very clear that we need to take care of America first. He said that in his first campaign. That has always been his style of managing, and he made that clear walking into this. How it got crossed during negotiations, I really don't know. Nancy Pelosi kind of held all those cards close to her during the negotiations.
Well, Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, and Republican leaders were involved too, but go ahead.
Well, to some degree, it mainly was taken care of with Nancy Pelosi because she kept it very close to her chest.
Well, she doesn't negotiate with herself, but go ahead.
Well, for a lot of parts she does, and I just tell you that because all of us are frustrated as lawmakers because of the process. But however, the president made it very clear that he wants $2,000, and I commend him for that. Once again, putting America first. That's where his mind has been for the last 4 years, and that's where he's still at today.
So you voted against this very large relief bill. It's more than 5,000 pages because you said that you only had a few hours to read it and you didn't have time, so you voted no. Have you read it since then?
We went through it to some degree. 5,993 pages, 5,593 pages. It takes a while to go through that. And keep in mind, Dana, this is the second largest bill in U.S. history and in the top 5 most expensive. So we have spent some time going through it just because we want to know what was actually in this bill. When we find more and more stuff, there's still stuff that still bothers me inside this, and that shouldn't be there. But I can tell you one thing's for sure: if we can spend all this money in foreign aid, if we can spend all this money in funding like the Kennedy Center, which is closed, I mean $23 million, which I'm not arguing about the Kennedy Center. I think they play a pivotal role, but $23 million, and we can't do $2,000 to U.S. citizens. There's a problem there. And so the 5,593 pages, the process was broke. That process should have included all members, not just held in the Speaker's office.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure you know you're not the first rank and file member to be upset about not being able to read a giant bill. This is happening. I've covered Congress for a lot of years, and I've heard that from both sides of the aisle many times. But now that you have, and I get it, if now that you have had time to go through it, do you think, had you had the time, would you have voted yes?
No, I still wouldn't have voted for the bill. Even if we would have had accurate time. And it's not that I haven't voted for bills, spending bills. I voted for a lot of spending bills. But this just isn't the type of money we need to be spending during a pandemic. We really do need to focus more on America first. And this 5,593 pages, it really didn't do that. If we're going to fund all these agencies, we need to fund them in a way that makes sure that we're taking care of what's most important, and that's our communities.
And what do you say to people in your community who hear you say, no, I wouldn't have supported this, I didn't support it, but I don't support it on the substance of it, who say, well, wait a minute, it's not everything I want, but it is $600 and that's not nothing. It could help me pay rent, or the provision in here that says that I won't be evicted and if I can't pay my rent, or the provision in here that says that I'll get more unemployment benefits, or that my state will get money to make sure that I can get a vaccine. How do you explain to your constituents that you said, no, I'm not voting for that?
Well, Dana, Oklahoma's been open for business, not like California or Massachusetts. We've been open, and so my constituents are at work, and we have been working, and our businesses are open, and we are doing what we need to do to make sure we take care of our communities. And so my constituents spoke very clear, even after the vote. They're glad I didn't vote for this. They think we can do better. They think we need to be more responsible for our spending. Just think about this, Dana. Every taxpayer out there just added $6,200 on the debt they already owe the United States government because of the money we continue to borrow if this bill comes into law. That's significant money. If we're going to pay it or somebody's going to pay it, but the debt just doesn't go away. The debt has to be paid at some point, and we've got to become responsible for the dollars that we're spending, because my constituents are hardworking taxpayers, and they expect us to do what's right in Washington, D.C. and spend the money correctly.
I also have to ask about another bit of drama that's going on, and that is the National Defense Authorization Act. It's the defense bill. This is a bill that passed with huge bipartisan support. You voted for it. It has passed for 59 years in that way. The money in it raises wages for troops, and it gives modernizes equipment, it sets defense policy, and many, many other things. The president vetoed this bill. There will be a vote this week, I believe tomorrow, to override the president's veto. Will you vote yes on the override?
I will not be voting to override the president's veto. Now, Chairman Inhofe, who is obviously the chairman of the Senate Armed Services, great friend of mine, mentor, almost like a grandfather to me, did a great job negotiating the bill. At the end of the day, I voted for it on the floor, but President Trump is our commander-in-chief, and he has built one of the biggest and strongest military we've seen in recent history, and he has his reasons to veto it, and if he's vetoed it, I will not vote to override his veto.
But Congressman, the reasons that he has given are largely twofold. One is because of the renaming of some Confederate bases that are named after Confederate leaders. And two, much bigger, something that is not even related to this, which has to do with social media companies, what's known as Section 230. So why do you put those, frankly, ancillary issues over funding the troops in harm's way, giving them pay raises and all the other things that this bill does that you obviously like because you voted for it in the first place? I mean, you exist as a check and balance against the president. Just because he vetoes it doesn't necessarily mean constitutionally that you have to go with him. Why did you make that decision?
Well, at the end of the day, he is our commander-in-chief, not just the president, but he's commander-in-chief. And he has done right by the military since he's been in office. And I trust he will continue to do right. He has his reasons, and as commander-in-chief, I'm going to support that. As I said before, he has rebuilt the military into the strongest it's been in years. And if he's able to do that, then I'm going to follow him all the way to the end. And if he's going to veto the NDAA, then I'll support his veto.
Are you worried about getting blowback from your constituents who are, I'm sure, largely Trump supporters if you do that? Is that part of the reason?
Keep in mind, our Oklahoma went overwhelmingly for President Trump.
Exactly.
They like his style, and so do I.
So you're worried about blowback from your constituents?
No, absolutely not. Not from my constituents at all. They like his management style, and I agree with them. And like I said, he loves the military. I love the military, but he has his reasons to veto it, and I'll support that.
Congressman Markwayne Mullin, thank you so much for joining me. Yep. Again, a lot to talk about. Thank you.
Well, Dana, thanks for having me on. I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you, Congressman.